I have a teacher at school that teaches a variety of subjects, and he is generally well liked. But the only strange thing about him is that he doesn't call any student by their real names, but by their future potential from his opinion. He comes in class and starts doing the register. "Potential cannibal?" Teacher shouts out loud, and Caleb raises his hand as he knows it's him because the teacher always calls him by that name. "Potential burglar?" Teacher shouts out loud, and Brian puts his hand up as he has been called that many times by the teacher. "Potential psychopath?" Teacher shouts out loud, and Emily puts her hand up as she knows it's her because the teacher always calls her that. "Potential murderer?" And I now put up my hand because he always calls me by that name. He has something for everyone, from potential freak accident to potential evil genius. I have to admit that was fun at first, but now I just want him to call me by my real name, which is Joshua. On another day, our teacher starts doing the register, and as usual, he calls everyone by their future potential and not their real names. But then he calls Caleb by his real name. We were all shocked. I asked my friend Caleb why our teacher didn't call Caleb potential cannibal anymore, and he asked me if I really wanted to know. Well, I obviously wanted to know, and he took me somewhere. Caleb and I had walked through a wonderful, spacious park after school. It was full of tall trees, and it was very nicely maintained. In this large park, there was an abandoned mansion, and I can't really say how long it had been there, but on that day, the front door of the mansion was wide open. Caleb wanted the two of us to check out what was inside the place. As we inched through the door, the very first thing I had noticed was that the mansion's floor was littered with crumpled up pieces of paper. We looked at each other and observed that there was no furniture, nothing except for those wrinkled balls of paper. The mansion had 6 rooms on its main floor, and every room we entered bore more and more scrunched up pieces of paper. Caleb wanted me to open up one of the paper balls to see what was inside, and my curiosity got the better of me. Caleb was also urging me to open up a scrunched ball of paper so that I could understand why the teacher called him by his real name and not his future potential. I picked up a single wrinkled piece of paper, and as my friend picked up another, I unfolded my paper and smoothed out its bends and dents. At that moment, it was almost as if a piece of rainbow had emerged before our eyes, and I was suddenly standing next to a large window in one of the upstairs rooms of the house. I was looking outside into the large park. When I looked down at the piece of paper I held, it read, "Look outside the large window that oversees the park in the upstairs parlor." I dropped the piece of paper and it fluttered gracefully to the ground. Meanwhile, I stared at my open hands in a bout of horror. Dazed and utterly perplexed, I found my way downstairs and met up with my friend Caleb. He was in the kitchen sitting at a round table that hadn't been there before. Where did that come from? I wondered. My friend Caleb stared at his open paper and reread the words several times before he looked at me and turned the page my way. It said, "Go to the kitchen and sit at the round table." We stared at each other for a few moments. I was vaguely afraid, but Caleb wasn't. Then I began to chuckle. Within seconds, we were both laughing our heads off, marveling at our newfound game. Well, Caleb discovered this many days before. I could hardly believe at what had happened, but being young as we were, the mystery was endlessly exciting. We decided again to open up another scrunched up piece of paper. As we opened up the crumpled papers on the floor, we experienced the same sudden flash of rainbow colors, but this time I ended up lying down in a field behind the mansion. When I peered onto the paper in my right hand, it read, "Lie down in the field behind the mansion." I giggled uncontrollably. After a few minutes of running around the house, I found my friend collecting multiple balls of paper in his arms, so eager to experience more of these strange, exciting phenomena. Caleb then went up to me, and he wanted to show me something. In a cupboard was another version of himself, but his hand was chopped off and tied to a metal pipe. Caleb told me that when he discovered this house all by himself, he picked up a scrunched up ball of paper, and when he unscrunched it, It had read, "You will find another version of yourself." And then in a flash of rainbow colors, there was his identical twin. He then beat up his identical twin really badly and then ate his arm, which then made him a real cannibal and not a potential cannibal, which is why the teacher called him by his real name. Caleb looked at me and told me to murder his identical twin. His identical twin has no birth certificate, and no one apart from me and Caleb knows that this twin exists. So, I killed Caleb's identical twin, and at school, my teacher called me by my real name, not potential murderer anymore. Because it's not potential anymore, but real.